Welcome back. Now today we're going to talk about mastering basic formulas. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of just what the operators are, make sure you know what they're doing, and then we'll go into basic formulas and some harder ones. So operators: plus, minus, multiply, divide, and combine here. So I'll just and divide. All right, so those are going to be your operators. You're going to use those in your formulas, in your cells to do things. If you want to add something, you just do this plus this, right? Super easy. This one I added in. It's not really an operator, but I wanted to show you the power of it. Sometimes if you're doing something in data science, you'll need to not even just data science. Sometimes you'll just need to look at a big data set. Maybe you're using multiple data sets, and you're going to need a unique identifier. One really quick and easy way to make a unique identifier is to take a couple categories and combine them. And the way we do that is we use this little ampersand here. You can also use concatenate. I'll just show that right now. If you do equals concatenate, okay, and then you go here, you press comma, you go here, boom. Now, these are different just from the order which I placed them. They're just reversed, but it's the same thing. All right. And so going into the basic formulas here, the sum, this is going to be like, you should probably be using this a lot. A lot of functions will automatically do it for you. But if you see here, you just do equals sum and you select this. Now, just a quick note when you're typing a formula, if you press the equals button, that'll automatically let you edit. Then you press sum, you just type that in. And now when I press tab, if you notice, this little parentheses pops up. So I don't actually have to type in the parentheses. If you press tab, it'll automatically insert it for you. And then now I can just arrow key over to the cells that I want, and we're going to highlight them. And then to close that off, you can either I can type in the parentheses, or if I just press enter, Excel will automatically add on that parentheses for me. Okay. So we got that sum there. That's what we did. And there's another quick shortcut, by the way. If you want to sum something really quick, instead of typing in, you can press Alt equals. Oh, sorry, press Alt and equals at the same time. Excel will basically just guess at what you want to sum, and that's a really quick way to get it done. All right, and so then we have the product formula. If you're trying to multiply two things together, it's pretty simple. You can do this, or you can do equals product, and you can do this. Okay, it's the same thing. Um, I've never really used it. I think if you're going to be multiplying some arrays together, you should be using some product, but we'll have pretty much a whole video for that. So we'll just leave that there. And then there's the average. All average does here is you type it in, you do equals, you type in the text, equals average, press tab, and you go over. It's just going to sum up all of the items that you've selected and then divide by the number of items. Okay, so press enter, boom, you have your average. You can do the same thing if I do equals sum, and right now I'm not going to press enter here because I want to keep typing, so I'm going to do parentheses, and I'm going to do a space here just to make it clear what I'm doing. I'm going to do a divide sign, and then I'm going to do count. So that's the next formula we're going to talk about. Count. What count will do is it will count the number of cells in this array. So what I can do is I can just click here and I can grab the same range, and then I close that off with parentheses, press enter, and we have the same number. All right. And we just talked about count, and we already talked about concatenate. Now, if error, now this one's pretty cool. So this will be really handy. Now, sometimes you're gonna be applying a bunch of formulas to rows and columns. You'll be doing a bunch of stuff in a Excel book, and what will sometimes happen is you'll get errors, and that can happen a lot of times if you have a text in a list of numbers. Now, one thing you can do is you can pre-look at the data and you can get rid of the text, zero it out, do something like that. But a lot of times, if you do have text on a line, you just want to ignore it. So right here, I wrote a formula, and if you don't know what's going on here, don't worry about it. But basically it's saying, hey, look for this number in this array and then multiply it by what's in this array and then add it up. The problem is that when what you're multiplying against in this, you can't multiply by text. So when it tries to multiply by red, it errors out. So all we do here is we're in this, okay? If we just type in if error, and you see how it guesses? If you just press tab, it's trying to tell you where what formula it thinks you want. If you press tab, it'll automatically jump you into that formula. So it says, okay, now we're in there. So it says, okay, within here, what do you want the value to normally be? Well, we've already written out a formula, so we just keep that as is. Don't even worry about it. Then you come all the way to the end, you press comma, and then you type in the value if there's an error. Let's do 0, then close parentheses. Boom, so now that's 0. And if we want it to be something else, we can come here and we can just type in, if you're doing text in a formula like this, make sure to put the quotation marks here. So let's do error. Okay, so you can just do things like that just to make your life simpler. A lot of times if you're in like a workbook or some a model, you can just add if errors to your formulas just to make it flow through correctly, and just save yourself some time there. So cranking it up just a little bit in difficult here, we're going to go to VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, SUMF, things like this. um, this is starting to be like what you might be tested on in like an Excel test online or something. I think most of those tests are pretty stupid. Um, you really need to give someone a very difficult problem and kind of watch them build something to see their mastery of Excel. You can't just say, hey, grab some data. I mean, it's a like bottom line, if like you really don't know what's going on, it can weed you out. But anyway, so what does VLOOKUP do? So, okay, let's say, let's say we're looking at this data set, right? What VLOOKUP basically does, it says, okay, I'm going to get rid of the identifier, but let's say, okay, you have this data set here, and we will look at the first column that you choose. So if I choose an array of this size, it will look at the first column for a value, and then it will return another column that you choose. So if I say, hey, I want you to look in this column and return the third column that aligns with number 5, it'll go here, like, okay, boom, 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 there's 5, okay, go over 3, and it'll return this. So if I do equals VLOOKUP and lookup value, we're just going to make that 5. We're going to specify the table array, so we're going to go over here. That's the array we're going to look at. I'm going to lock that. And then what columns do we want to return? We can return, let's just return the second column. So let's get the category here. And then it'll say, what do you want? I always want an exact match. Sometimes you want an approximate match, but usually you want an exact match, which is 0. All right. And so all that's done is says, okay, there's your 3, and it will return as, oh, what did I type in? Oh, I typed in 5, yeah. So it returns as domestic. Okay, let's try this again. Let's do VLOOKUP, and I'm actually gonna code. So what can be really cool is, say I do 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I can do equals VLOOKUP. I want you to look up this value. I want you to look it up in this array. Now notice how I'm going to lock the array, but I'm going to leave this unlocked. Okay. And then I want you to return the third column with a true match. Okay. And I can just drag this down, Control D. And what happens is it says, okay, find number 1, get the third column. Find number 2, get the third column. Find number 3, get the third column. And let's see what happens if we do this for domestic. So I do equals, I'm going to say, okay. Just type in domestic here. Equals VLOOKUP tab. We're going to do domestic. We're going to look it up. Now remember that it has to be the first column in the array. If I did it like this, it would error out because it would be looking for domestic here. It has to be in the first column on the left side. So we're just gonna, okay, we're gonna just change the array there. And we're gonna do, now this is column number 2. And we want an exact match. Okay, so notice that what it did was it looked for the first time it saw domestic and then it returned the value. It's not summing all in the instances of domestic. So if I did international, okay, it goes down until it finds international and then it returns the value. It's going to ignore these values down here. And that's going to lead us directly into what is SUMF. So what SUMF does, it says, okay, we know how to sum this entire thing here. Okay, but how do we sum it for just domestic? Okay, so we know that if we did this, so if I go over here, if I do equals, I'm going to do domestic plus domestic plus, I'm going to make this a little faster, domestic right here. Okay, we know that'll be 133 million. So what we can do is we can just say, okay, let's do a SUMF. So we do equals SUMF tab. What's the range we're looking at? Okay, we're looking at this range right here. Okay, and what is your criteria? Well, we're going to be looking for, it's going to be the cell over. You can't see it right now, but that's where domestic is. And which range are we summing? Okay, so what did that do? So it said, okay, we started off with saying, what's the range we're looking in? And then we identified our criteria. And then we said, hey, this is the range inside of that range, which we are summing. All right. And what that did is it returned the same value as adding them all up individually. Now, that can be really useful if we know there's like 2 or 3 values here. If I drag this down, boom, now it just gave us international. And if I quickly just do this, there you go. It's the same number. So that's your VLOOKUP. HLOOKUP, it's very similar. It's just going to return from the top. So if I just did equals HLOOKUP, remember VLOOKUP, it used the search functionalities off of the first column here. HLOOKUP, the search functionality will be off the first row. So if I do equals HLOOKUP, what value are you looking for? Let's just say we're looking for domestic. Okay. And where's our table array? Well, our table array is here. Remember, it's going to look for the top value here. And how many rows do we want to return down? Well, let's return down 3 rows. Okay, and let's do an exact match. So what happened? It said, okay, it found domestic within here, and it went down 3 rows and found international. Okay, now I don't like using VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. I think that using index and index match is better, but we'll go into that in a separate video. So for now, you know how to do that. That's awesome. Let's quickly go into the if statement. So we'll just say equals if. So it asks for a logical test. Let's just say if revenue is greater than product, then return as check. Otherwise, return as error. Okay, and that returned as check. Now what I can do is I can put that there. Oh, it didn't like that because I didn't lock the cells. I'm gonna column lock these and I'll have a separate video talking about that. Okay, and we're just gonna move that here. Cool. So what I did, it just said, okay, look at these 2 values and, you know, if this returns as true, then return this. If this returns as false, do this. This is great for error checking in your models. And then you just pull that down, and that's how we can check a whole range of values there. That's just a really simple if. And let's do count if. Already showed you count earlier. COUNTIF is simple. Let's just say COUNTIF, here's your range, okay? What's your criteria? Domestic. 7, right? So what we can do, say we wanted the average here, we can say, okay, well the SUMF of domestic was this, and the COUNTIF was this. So the average for domestic is 133,986. How do we know that? We only summed when it was domestic here, and we only counted when it was domestic. So that just achieved the same thing as the average. All right, and the last thing I'm going to show in this video is just how to do random. Sometimes you're going to need to come up with probabilities, or you're going to need to come up just with some quick data just to play with. One thing you can do here is the random. So there's two different randoms you can use. There's the equal rand, and you don't even type anything in, you just press enter. And what it does is um, it just comes up with a number between 0 and 1. Okay, and just be careful when you do equals random, when you do something else in your workbook, when you refresh it, all of these are going to refresh. So every time your workbook refresh, and your workbook will refresh every time you enter a formula, this will update. So what you do is you get your rand. If you want to save it, you just do Alt H V, paste as values, which is V again, and now these are stored as values. We can do this if we want bigger numbers. We can do equals rand between, okay, and just say, okay, I want something between 10 and 100, okay. Same thing, you just pull that down. Notice how when I pulled that down, that went from 97 to 17, and then we just lock those in, okay. Super easy. And I'm going to go into Boolean logic, and we'll go into more complex formulas from here. But thank you for tuning in, and have a good day.